Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today's guest is someone who I found out about, thankfully and luckily, from our great friends in the community, Blind Table Talk. And I noticed that they posted, and one of the many reasons why I wanted to get in touch with your organization, to which you have very graciously and appropriately responded to me very, very quickly, and I cannot thank you enough for it. But one of the most interesting things, apart from the many things that I'm interested in, is it says, I heard that Blind Table Talk was joining your podcast network. And then I thought, oh, okay, well, I need to learn about that, because I'm always ready to expand my audience to various networks who are interested in what we do. And then when I found out more about all the other great stuff you do, I thought, I need to interview Mike Curtis and interview MindsEye. So who are you as a person, by the way, and how has your life led up to this creation of this wonderful organization called MindsEye? And what can you tell me about your network, and how does it all work? So I'll mute my microphone and listen to you for as long as you really want to talk about it. So go right ahead.
Sure. Appreciate it, Aaron. My journey to MindsEye is a weird one, but it kind of makes sense. So my background is in music technology. So I went to school for recording music, that type of thing. So I did that for a few years, worked at music retail throughout my 20s, did live sound, recorded bands and stuff through that time. Moving through that, I came at a point in my career if I wanted to take a bigger step in that, either that's joining a bigger studio, moving to a bigger city with a bigger network to get a handle on those things and kind of learn those ropes, or kind of to take a different direction. A guy that I used to work with, Tom Williams, worked at MindsEye part-time while he worked at the same store that I did. They had an opening for a broadcast assistant, which is really just editing basic audio, which is more simpler than I'm doing. So I was obviously qualified for the position. I didn't know much about MindsEye at that time. The more I learned about it, I was like, I think I could do this. So I decided to come to MindsEye. Then it was really just on a 1-year grant. And it was 32 hours a week. So it's kind of a slight pay cut for me, but I figured a year of doing this opportunity was going to look better on a resume and might lead to some other things as opposed to staying where I was. So coming aboard here, doing MindsEye, which for those who don't know, MindsEye, we have a bunch of programs, but I'll concentrate on the broadcast side of things right now. So our broadcast information service, most stations in most states and major cities have a station similar to ours, though not similar. Most are run by state-funded organizations, whether that's a local university or capital city. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, to where we are privately raising money and donations to provide our service, rather than relying on a school or university to give us sole funding to perform the duties that we do. So what we do here is we air about 135 hours of programming a week. That's done by about 75 volunteers. So volunteers either come to our studio or record from home, popular magazines, newspapers, local content, digital subscriptions. They record that material and then we broadcast that out a few different ways. SCA Radio is kind of how we were founded, which is a subcarrier network. So not the greatest signal, but it works. So those are specifically designed for radios that are tuned to our station. So no regular AM or FM radio does this. So we started in 1974, and we kind of kept that same backbone through 50 or 52 years now coming up. And then obviously as times change, we've grown that out to be on digital platforms. So we have our own app, we have our website, Alexa skill, all those things. You can find our signals. Not just the live radio broadcast side of things, but on-demand programming. So if somebody doesn't tune into a show at specifically 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, they can go back and listen to it at their leisure, and kind of how media consumption has evolved to nowadays standards where you kind of want it on demand on your time and your schedule. So that's kind of how the broadcast program is kind of fleshed out. So my duties here are to manage those volunteers and manage that broadcast schedule and take care of all the digital technology that goes within that. Obviously, being a small nonprofit, we don't have the luxury of hiring out everything to do every job here. MindsEye is a unique organization, whereas the other two programs that we have are a audio description program, which I have the basics of a handle on. It's not a big portion of my job. Megan Harms, who's our arts and cultural director, is the one who handles most of those duties. But we have live volunteers go to theater, sporting events, and museums around the St. Louis area and beyond now, and live audio describe to those who are blind or visually impaired, those events. And then my job with that is just to make sure our technology that we're using works in new venues. We use a app called Live Voice now. So most of that's done through that. So I don't really need to test much anymore, as opposed when we had actual individual devices that operate on a RF frequency. And then our adaptive athletics program, which is the other thing that I'm in charge of. We have demonstrations and events throughout the year to let those who are in the community in the St. Louis area try out beat baseball, goalball, blind soccer. Beat baseball is by far our biggest portion of that. That and our team of the Gateway Archers, which is our nationally competing beat baseball team with the National Beat Baseball Association, as well as us hosting the NBBA World Series this past year in 2024 and also next year in 2025. So that's kind of the shorthand of everything we do here. So it's a big mishmash of stuff, but it's all to help the greater St. Louis community of those who are blind and visually impaired.
All great, all amazing, absolutely. So yeah, music technology, that really speaks to me a lot here at Aaron's Opinion. We have a lot of musicians in our podcast family who are blind who would love to learn from you and work with you. There's always need for people with that background in music technology. So that is really, really fun. So what else can you tell me about music technology? What turned you on to music technology, for one thing?
Well, when I went to school, so I'm not naturally musically gifted. I didn't pick up an instrument until I was 17. Then I started to play in a few punk bands and rock bands, playing guitar. Doing that, you don't need to be that proficient at your instrument, which kind of helped out the learning curve. But then starting college, I wanted to go into music because I found out I liked doing it, but I didn't know enough about it to be very proficient at it. So I started off going to Southwestern Illinois College in music performance, which after about a year and a half of that, I realized I may not be good enough to do this professionally, which only a handful of people do in one way or another, the way I wanted to do it anyways. At that time, the school started offering a certificate for music technology. So I started enrolling in that program. As I started that program, then they offered a degree in it. That's kind of switched to the degree. But doing that gave me a backbone in how to read music, learn a few different instruments. I learned how to play piano. Again, not the best at it, but I can get around. And then just through internships and doing stuff like that, I realized that I really like helping others create music and perfect their creations, as opposed to just creating music on my own and making their performances and their vision come to life. So that's kind of what kind of got me the bug with that. I'll say I worked at Guitar Center, is the store I worked at. Working there, I got a great lessons in a bunch of different things. Becoming into management, obviously managing, but then also sales. But working in the professional audio department there, to sell the equipment, you need to know what you're selling. So there I got a lot of background in a bunch of popular recording software, Pro Tools, Ableton, Reason, Logic, and virtual instruments, all that stuff. So a bunch of audio programs. I quickly had to learn how to troubleshoot all of them because people would call me after they purchased something, run into issues. I would have to know how to solve them. So I built up a database in my head on how to fix programs and softwares and how to troubleshoot items. And I became pretty proficient at that. The grant that I got hired on at MindsEye for, obviously doing the broadcast assistant type thing, but they also wanted to get in their programs into NLS format for NLS players and NLS cartridges, which aren't too widely used anymore, besides books, but the older generation still seems to hang on to them. Some of the younger folks might use them too. So I had to learn from the ground up how to put audio into NLS or DAISY format, which wasn't as easy as I thought, but my background in programs, audio programs, kind of helped me cut that learning curve a little bit. We use a program called Hindenburg. And then through MindsEye, we got to do stuff for the state of Illinois for a little bit. So even though we cover, I should have mentioned this, even though we cover the St. Louis area, we're actually located in Belleville, Illinois, which is about 15 minutes on the east of the Mississippi side of St. Louis. So the bigger population of who we serve is in St. Louis, but our physical location is in Illinois.
Excellent. Very, very good. Well, I'm sure after you join our podcast family, our various groups that we have, you'll meet some of these musicians and definitely connect with them. That's really, really good. Excellent. So, yeah, it sounds like you guys have a ton of different programs. So let's walk through that. I guess where to start. So what are some of the programs that you have, and where could somebody listen, and how do people actually listen to these programs and find out about that? Because luckily you gave a lot of information, and it's clear that your organization deals with many different forms of media. So really break down the ingredients a little further.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start off with the broadcast side of things. So the broadcast is made up of kind of a hodgepodge of where we used to be and where we are now. So the backbone of what we do is St. Louis local papers, which is the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the Belleville News-Democrat. So those two are the biggest papers in our area that provide news, not just local to the cities, but on a somewhat a wider view too. So we air those Monday through Friday. So every day those papers are printed, those get read and broadcast out. Obviously other popular publications such as USA Today, Wall Street Journal, those are read every day as well. And then we kind of supplement around that. Every local county paper of those that have survived this long, we read in subcapacity. So even though we may only have a handful of listeners that live in Bond, Washington County, we still read those county papers once a week. So those folks who live in that area can still have access to that information that's in those papers. And we do that with all the surrounding counties around St. Louis and also parts of central Illinois as well. So around that, we still fit national publications. So any magazine that you would traditionally find on the grocery store news rack is our old tagline used to be the virtual newsstand. So things like People Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine, all these big publications we read in a capacity too that usually airs once a week. So that's kind of where we get the 75 hours of programming from. So usually from 8 o'clock in the morning to about 10 o'clock in the evening, Sunday to Saturday, we're airing newer programming. And then sometimes that repeats throughout the week on certain hours. So it's a lot of information for people who want it and want access to those materials. So I mentioned earlier, we broadcast out through SCA Radio, which is the oldest way of doing things and the easiest way. So for an individual to use that, they would get a physical radio mailed to them. They'd have to be within 75 miles of, we'll say central St. Louis, to receive that signal, because then it kind of degrades outside of that 75 miles. So that's the oldest way that people listen to us. But again, the easiest way. So it's a simple radio. There's no tuning in. There's just a volume knob. Sometimes there's a tone knob to change the quality of sound. And that's what we send to our most listeners who want the ease of use. They may be elderly in life, lost their vision later in life, probably didn't use technology that much if they had vision. Aren't going to magically, if they're 80 and just lost their vision, they're probably not going to magically learn how to use an iPhone with voiceover, or some of these other tools that are available these days. So the SCA radio is still the largest thing that we mail out from here physically, to that demographic. Wanting to keep up with the times and how people consume media, our website has all of our shows on demand on a simple show list page. So if you go to our website, MindsEyeRadio.org, if you're using voiceover and screen reading technology, you're usually a few clicks away, or a few page overs or headers down to get where you need to be to access all that material. And then our live stream is there as well. And then also the Alexa skill, which we keep up on, which I can go into this a little bit too. We'll get to it. But all of our programs are on demand there, as well as the live stream for both Central Illinois and St. Louis area. And then our app, which we had an older app that has been out for roughly 2 years. That was developed by some students at Washington University in St. Louis, kind of as a senior project type thing. So free work is always good work if you're a nonprofit. But we quickly kind of outgrew that format. So we have a new app that just launched within the past month, on iOS and Apple devices. That's a little bit more organized, cleaner, and easier to navigate, as well as a few extra tools that people who use and absorb information through an app like this or through a podcast platform such as speeding up or slowing down the audio. Coming with all that technology comes managing that technology, and managing that technology on a budget is something that we have to figure out as a nonprofit on a day-to-day basis. So again, my background with learning music recording software and software in general, I was able to learn how to edit, access, and update everything on the Alexa skill, our mobile app. So even though I didn't design these things, I'm not capable of designing these things. I am able to maintain, update, and correct those platforms. So just recently, at the beginning of November, we got rid of a few shows and added a few shows. So doing that, with the power of analytics, I'm able to kind of check in and see what shows get listened to and downloaded to. And then every year we kind of revamp that through surveying and kind of see what folks want more of, and I can find out what they don't listen to. So we kind of change those things around, and that's how we get our schedule. So doing that, I have to go through these platforms one by one, delete all the old ones, add all the new ones, and then test them, make sure they work. So it's an ongoing process, but luckily we only try to revamp once a month or once a year on a scale that we just did. So we just got rid of 4 shows and added, I think, 10 shows. But on a day-to-day basis, we're constantly adding programming, and updating programming, throughout the week. So every day that we do a USA Today or a Wall Street Journal, that has to get uploaded to all those platforms. Luckily we have tools to make it easier, but it's an ongoing process. Sometimes the computers are smart, but sometimes they don't do everything you want them to do. And then we have to manually check some of those things as opposed to hopefully all our automation software gets it. Which that's a complicated system in itself, but being around long enough and having the talent, of people before me and the talent of people that we have employed with us right now. Jonathan Millam, who's a blind individual who actually lives in the Carolinas. He wrote in for us and designed a lot of, the processes we use on our broadcast stuff today. So he's a real whiz with Wire Ready, which is our automation software we use. So he's actually programmed a lot of stuff to help make our jobs easier, my job easier specifically. But yeah, managing all that is easy, but then you also got to manage the people who make it happen. So most of these programs are read by volunteers. Some of them come to our studios and record them in booths. Some of them have the luxury of recording at home. Obviously, with the advancement of technology and quality of smart devices, recording through your computer or iPad or smartphone, the quality, it's not as good as what we can do here in the studio, but it's not too far off. As long as the information's there and voice is coherent, concise, it works for us and usually works for the listener. Which the pandemic is as bad as it is for a lot of people, was kind of good for us because it changed the way that we did things here, but it changed it for the better. So it opened up our volunteerism, to more demographics that we normally didn't have. Most of our volunteers before the pandemic were usually individuals that lived within 20 minutes of our studio, and then are also probably recently retired because it's kind of hard to get somebody to come here at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday to record something that airs at 12. There's not a lot of individuals with that time. But now opening up our ability to record from home and those processes, we have individuals who are in college, high school, that work regular 9-to-5 jobs, that work whatever hours they want to. They're able to kind of record on their time from home and not have to worry about our studio hours here. So managing all them takes a little bit of effort, but it's a big group effort from everybody to make what we do work well.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That sounds like so much fun. What you guys do is so my geeky, nerdy broadcaster personality. This is such a blast. I could talk about this with you forever. I just love this. Absolutely. And the part about you sending out the physical radios, that's really touching. That's really, really cool because that shows that people matter when you give them a little physical radio that connects to your broadcaster signal, on that terrestrial signal. That is really super, super cool, actually. Yeah. Really good. So, and the reason why I love this so much and what you guys do is because we here at Aaron's Opinion, we have a global audience of people listening all over the world. So I'm glad to know that you have an app and things. So for instance, one of our countries, although there are many, one of the countries where we have a large group of our audience is South Africa. So for example, can my South African fans access your MindsEye content online, and can they just listen from overseas? Like how does that work, and how do you factor that in to what you do?
Yeah, with the power of internet, as long as you're able to access our website, mindseyeradio.org, or able to download from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store our app, they can tune into everything that we do, as long as it's available in their country. So there's no limitations on that. Obviously, through analytics, I'm able to kind of see where people tune in from. Unless you're using a VPN, which I'm sure there's some people that do. Most of our listenership, most of our listenership is within the St. Louis metro area or the Illinois, Missouri area. But there are pockets throughout the rest of the world, primarily United States, that tune into our program. Another benefit of what we are, we're able to branch out a little bit further too. So I mentioned earlier, there's other areas of the U.S. that have stations similar to ours. Some of those stations aren't as big as ours. So I mentioned we do about 135 hours of programming. Most stations have employees of one. We're still a small nonprofit, but we have 6 employees here that are in studio and able to help out here. Most other places have 1. And they may have 20 volunteers. So a lot of those other stations, they focus on their local content, and then borrow some national content from somebody like us. So we're listened to in Boston, in Arizona, New York, Georgia, Ohio, pretty much all over the U.S. So the benefit of doing national publications like USA Today. So say if the guys in Boston, if their volunteer called out sick that day and ours is available, they'll use our content. Vice versa. If I have somebody who called out sick and I don't have their programming, I'm able to borrow from them for a day or two. So it's a big cohesion as far as that goes. But yeah, with the scale we're able to operate at, there's other stations like ours around the U.S. that borrow content from us, to fill out their program schedule. So that's kind of cool to stay connected in that way too.
Yeah, that's so fun. That's so cool because you could all work together as like a whole conglomerate and share information and knowledge all over the country. That is tremendously powerful. Yeah. Have you, to your knowledge, are there any organizations overseas that do this exact thing just for their own country?
Yes and no. So the United States obviously is different than a lot of countries.
Hmm?
Canada has their own broadcasting network. Most of theirs, I haven't kept up with it, is delivered through television, through a special channel on there. Like we have public access TV, here in the States, but they have a public access station that's available to most Canadians through their network. I know of a few groups in England and Scotland that had stations similar to ours, but every country is going to be different. And obviously in the United States, every state's different. So even though, for our instance, in Illinois, even though we cover a large portion of our area, there's still 8 other micro stations that manage stuff in the Illinois region. All of that, most of them are funded either by like the University of Illinois or local universities, but we also receive money from the state of Illinois through the library service. So we're an extension of the library service, for the state of Illinois, which is kind of weird to look at it, but it makes sense. Um, so yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of people. And again, obviously when you get to smaller communities, if there is a station like ours, it's not as robust, but they're able to accomplish some of those things and take care of what they need to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm really proud of you guys to hear this because this is such a sense of encouragement to see for me as a podcaster who happens to be blind to see a station that's doing so much success and so much good for so many people. That is so encouraging. It's just doing the right thing, and that's so fascinating. So you have hundreds of hours a week, as you say, of content. So okay, now that I know how it works, now that I know all the engineering behind this, so but what are the programs each week? And you say that you've deleted some and added some. So okay, what types of programs would I be able to find? Let's say that I get the app, right, and I start going through the program list. So what can you offer me to listen to?
Sure. So we're kind of going, as times change. Obviously, content changes. Um, so the backbone of what we used to be has been popular newspapers. So I mentioned Wall Street Journal, USA Today, our local papers here, Chicago Tribune, those type of things. Those publications are still pretty strong today as they were 10 years ago. Um, some magazines and some other information probably isn't as strong as what it was 10 years ago. So that's kind of why we've had to change. And some content isn't as popular as it was, say, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So one thing that we've started doing is transitioning, um, kind of keep up with the times. So obviously the way we do things, radio itself is, I don't want to say a dying media, but it's a falling behind media. And we're not immune to those fallbacks of what this type of media provides. So obviously we don't want to get rid of publications that people still have a firm grasp of, that the content is good, the writing is good, and the publication is respected, across the U.S. But one thing we started adding doing, which you alluded to earlier, is our podcasting network. So what that is the amount of content we provide. We don't have the ability to host all these podcasts here. So we do have our few in-house programs that we run, similar to your show, but not quite as in depth as what we do. So we have our show Ear to Ear, which is hosted by Brian, who volunteers for us. He actually works for Ameren, Illinois, which is a big power company. So he gets to meet a lot of great, interesting people around the St. Louis metropolitan area. So doing that, he interviews these people. We air those interviews once a week. We also have a local sports show. It's hosted by Tom Williams, our former broadcast director, as well as one of our volunteers, Mark Stengel. So they talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, St. Louis Blues, and a few other national sports things. So those are ones we do in-house. But one way we wanted to expand that is to have podcasts that are either similar to yours, by blind or visually impaired creators, or for the community. Sometimes those are both. So in those retrospects, that's when we've got with Joe and Say on Blind Table Talk, and a few other programs. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Taking the Lead podcast, and then like the Blind Grilling Experience, Beat Baseball podcast, Ice Free Sports, and then what was the other one? Oh, Blind City, which is about St. Louis issues. So all those either have blind or vision impaired creators or are about the community. So those are a little bit more free range, obviously not as linear as say reading a newspaper would be. So it creates content that's more interesting, and we're able to give those creators a platform to access individuals and people they might not normally reach. Obviously, most of these podcasts are on your popular podcasting apps such as Apple or Spotify, but having them a part of our network and then being aired live as a part of our regular programming, their most recent episodes, it reaches audiences they may not normally get to reach, especially here in the St. Louis area and the Central Illinois area. So having those a part of our podcasting network gives them a bigger platform, gives them more reach, but also helps us get our demographics and our listeners new and current information, as well as other opinions and other viewpoints about the community and information they might not get elsewhere. So that's kind of what the idea behind that is, and that's what we're kind of looking to grow more of, because that's kind of the way the media has been going in general. Regular talk radio isn't as prominent as it once was. It's more podcasters and those platforms that are kind of the forefront of listening media nowadays.
Absolutely. That is so great. So how does a podcast join the network? How does it work?
And it's really no officiality behind that. It's us looking at the content that they provide. One, seeing if it's a good fit for what we do, which we haven't had too many that aren't a good fit that we've approached about it. But then also carving out a block from our schedule. So a few of them, a few podcasts like the Blind Grilling Experience, it was a great podcast. He unfortunately, Chris, who used to do it, slowed down on doing them, and I don't know if he's actually had a new episode for quite a while. But obviously, cooking food, it's not something that goes out of style. So it was still available on some of our platforms, but we took it out of the regular rotation on the live stream side of things. And that's kind of when we added Blind Table Talk. And then also Thomas Reed is one of the new ones that we had too. Thomas Reed's Read My Mind is an audio description-based podcast, as well as other issues. So those are our two newest ones that we've added. And then other things we got rid of were regular shows, magazine shows. One of them was called Vintage Design, which was all about antiquing and that type of stuff, which is interesting. But those magazines make it hard to make an hour programming interesting and capture a listener's ear for that long for somebody to tune in for that, because it's already kind of a niche thing. And if the program isn't interesting, it's already a niche audience. So that's one of the ones we decided to get rid of. And then just consolidation. A lot of magazines have gotten smaller and smaller. I don't know the last time you picked up a physical magazine. But most magazines these days are about half the length of what they used to be. So we used to read, we still do read Christian Science Monitor, but we used to have it broken up into 2 separate hour-long blocks. Now it's just down to 1 hour. And then Time Magazine used to be 2 hours as well. We broke that down to 1 hour. So just to get the most information, rather than having 2 separate hours with decent content for the first 45 minutes and then having to use filler content for the last 15 minutes, it just makes things a little bit easier and gets the most important content available and consolidated to that 1 hour. But a few other programs that we added outside the podcasting network is The Atlantic, as well as Tech Talk, which is Mac World and PC World. So definitely varying topics of what we want to cover. But chances are the person listening to us, it goes two ways. I'm not naive enough to think that somebody sits in front of MindsEye Radio and listens from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's their whole day. They usually tune into the programming that they want to listen to. we want to do our job of giving as much variety of them to tune into, so they can pick their favorite shows they want to listen to on a weekly basis or a daily basis, um, and cater to them that way. If somebody does want to tune in and leave it on for the whole day, that's great. I know there's probably some people that have our service that maybe listen to the morning news while they're doing their morning routine and stuff like that, just like any normal person would do, and have a podcast and clean around the house. They would do that for us. And the other side of things, which kind of gets overlooked, is the human element to this. Obviously, with the rise of AI and all that stuff, we could probably take a lot of these programs, and a lot of websites even offer an audio version of their articles, but it's usually voiced over AI or audio generated voice. The human element of this is also overlooked. So again, with a larger portion of our listening audience being elderly, that sometimes that means isolation. Sometimes that means they're in an assisted living care facility with limited family visitors. Sometimes they live on their own. Having an actual person reading content to you makes a world of difference on the mental side of things, as opposed to an AI generated voice or a voice over text. So the human element of what we do is kind of one of the most important things about it, honestly.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So, okay, well, all of these podcasts sound very interesting. We'll definitely have to connect off air and talk more extensively, but some of those people I've interviewed and others I've never heard of. So I definitely want to network with you and learn about these new podcasts, because this is especially ear to ear, and all of those people and podcasts you just mentioned. I would love to be connected with them, because, we never have a shortage of guests in the community. We always need the next guest.
Yeah.
So that's really good for me to know that there's all these extra people that I had never heard of. Yeah, Chris Peltz, I interviewed him a long time ago. He's great. That blind
Yeah.
grilling thing, that's a great concept. Yeah.
And most people are like, they're super willing with their time. It just takes asking. And most people, when I've talked to them about adding their podcast now, they're super excited. Again, reaching a platform that they may not be normally on, or a different part of the country they may not normally be in. If they're talking about certain parts of their area or certain parts in their community, I may be slightly different here in St. Louis, but sometimes those issues and topics ring true no matter where you are. So it's good to give them access to new individuals and a new platform, and gain their listenership as well.
Well, very good. So you play those podcasts in a rotation, yeah?
Yep. So yeah, with the hosted podcast, which is what we call them here, their newest episode will air once a week, and then get on our digital platforms as well. And then one way we help out the creators, so this gets into nitty gritty stuff. So obviously people, especially in the podcasting world, like looking at their numbers, their number of views, downloads, listens, all that stuff. So even though Apple, Spotify, they track that stuff for those platforms, we're able to track that on our side of things too. So every month or every quarter or every year, if those individuals want to know their downloads through MindsEye Radio, I'm able to access our analytics and let them know what shows we're listening to the most, which weeks we're listening to the most, how many downloads and all that stuff they get to. So they're able to access that for their numbers if they're trying to get sponsorships or things like that, and things that advertisers like to know. So that information is all available to them too. It's one way we collaborate and work together on that front.
Yeah, really good. Excellent. Yeah. And by the way, do you have some sort of audio commercial that you could give me to help me when I build, when I build the audio? Do you have an audio commercial, like an MP3, where you like introduce what MindsEye is and something like that? Because that would be a really cool thing that I'd be more than happy to add into this episode and future episodes to help you guys to get out to the next person. Sort of like a little commercial that I can put in there if you want. Yeah. Do you have something like that? Yeah.
Not that we have ready, but with my access to technology and my optimism, I'm pretty sure I can make one pretty quickly.
Well, great. I'd be more than happy to add that into the pre-roll of my episodes. Absolutely. Well, that's super good. Okay. And then outside of podcasts, so you read there's some magazines that people could listen to. What about, what are some other things? Do you guys delve into like history shows? Do you delve into like horror? Do you delve into like weird stuff? What are some other areas that you have your, that you dig into?
Yeah, so on a regular basis, so on a weekly basis, we do have a history show. That actually just got rebranded. So it used to just be American History, which that was American History magazines and a few supplemental things, but we actually just changed it to history because even though American history is important and cool, there's all other kinds of cool history out there. So we didn't want to leave that information out too. But yeah, some of the more fun things we do. So in the kitchen, it's cooking show, so you can get the latest recipes from all the big cookbooks and stuff coming out. So that's in there. Guideposts. We do some religious programming. So
Good.
Actually, I should have mentioned that. So we're actually based on the Catholic grounds of Our Lady of the Shrine Snows, which is a Catholic organization, which is kind of how we were founded. One of the Catholic priests of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate founded our organization, and we broke off in 2017 as our own nonprofit. So even though we're on Catholic grounds, we don't have any denomination we're affiliated with anymore. So, I mean, even before then, we aired Jewish Light, Christian Today, Catholic Today, and then we even had a spirituality show, which was aired for a few years. So we offer all those. But then also things like, I'm looking at the schedule right now to kind of see. So Military Times, so military history, Military Times magazine, Outdoorsman, just all hunting, fishing, those type of topics. Brain Trust, which is all about financing, down to business, same thing, finances. So any topic that a person may have a hobby and or interest in, we read in some capacity. But some of the more out there are like one-off shows that we kind of do. We've done audio description services. So on the grounds here at the shrine, they have what they call the Way of Lights, which is a big drive-through telling of the Stations of the Cross. So big light display attracts thousands of visitors every year. So we actually went through and audio described that tour. So we play that during the holiday times. We've actually done some comic books in the past with voiceover, sound effects, all that production. So that was fun because I got to actually do some production work. So that was kind of cool. We had a program. Daredevil was the main comic book series we stuck to for obvious reasons. But one of those programs won an award for production through our IAAIS, which is our coalition of audio networks that we run with. So that was cool. So yeah, and then the funny pages, which is another thing. So obviously they used to be super relevant in newspapers. A lot of people still like listening to them, Snoopy and The Odd Couple and all those things. So our volunteer, Greg, who reads that every week, audio describes the panels and the text and all that stuff too, and does some fun voices. So we do some more interesting things rather than just your news. There's entertainment, information, sports, that type of stuff too.
Fabulous. So good. Absolutely. What about a podcast magazine? Have you added that one into your audio?
No. So yeah, our quote unquote podcast, hosted podcast, it's all just their platforms. We don't have any publications about podcasting.
No. I mean, there is a publication called Podcast Magazine.
Oh yeah, that's one thing that we do not have yet.
Because that's also very detailed, talking about the podcast industry, and that's digital. So that's something that somebody would look at it and read it.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very useful, thing, especially for people who like to nerd out about the podcast industry. That's a huge publication. Yeah, really, really interesting. And I'm pleased to hear that you have spiritual content and all this content. Yeah. I wonder, how did I not hear about your organization sooner? Is what I wonder. So what do you guys do for marketing? Because yeah, I mean, I've never heard of this, and the only way that I found out is just by watching, following along when Blind Table Talk joined your network. They posted about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, being a nonprofit, we don't have a huge marketing budget. I mean, obviously, primarily we're still based in the St. Louis area side of things. So the Central Illinois area came about. There was a smaller station that operated out of the state's capital and at the University of Illinois Springfield. They unfortunately shut down due to funding. So we kind of took over their area and then partnered with another station in Peoria to get some content there. So that's why we operate in Central Illinois. But outside of that, it's kind of hard to market something like us outside of our region. just due to funding and stuff like that. We attend conferences that are geared towards blind and low vision and radio, and then sometimes sports throughout the country to kind of get our information out there. It depends on the conference of what we're trying to get out there. Obviously, if we're going to a sports conference where we're talking about adaptive athletics, not necessarily the broadcast side of things. And if there is some sort of broadcast or radio conference, chances are we've partnered with the IAAIS, the bigger coalition of audio networks, and they're representing us and every other station from that side of things. But yeah, I mean, through St. Louis, referral agencies is our biggest thing of how we get more clients and more listeners. But then partnering with other places like Lighthouse for the Blind St. Louis is one of our bigger funders, but also one of our biggest partners as far as getting our information out there. So they're able to not only tap into their workforce, which is made up of blind and visually impaired individuals. They have a bigger network of connection with the state of Missouri and their families through their outreach and their programs. So every year, we do about 10 audio description dates at Busch Stadium, which is home of the St. Louis Cardinals, and about 10 events at Enterprise Center, which hosts the St. Louis Blues. Lighthouse usually offers half price tickets, for those events. So through Lighthouse, they'll pay for half the ticket you choose to attend those events. As well as we partner with St. Louis City SC, which is the soccer club here in St. Louis. We audio describe every one of their home games, which I think when we started doing that last year, they were the first sporting venue to offer audio description at all home dates, which is kind of cool. And then, through other rehab services and other, blind service centers like Missouri Council for the Blind, Service Club for the Blind, United Workers for the Blind. Those are our big referral services. So chances are if they get somebody new coming to them, they'll let them know about the services that we offer.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. So you mentioned how you were aware of other countries that have programs similar to what you guys do. But as far as your listeners, so over the years, have you attracted listeners from overseas who need these programs in their own country?
Not that I would know of on an individual basis rather than some numbers on a spreadsheet. The only reason why I began looking into that was, again, for the Illinois service side of things. So, and then the IAAIS side of things. So they're looking to outreach into other countries because the I in IAAIS stands for International. I should probably know this a lot better. Anyways, it stands for international because Canada was included in that. But reaching out to other countries about services and kind of get them connected with us to, again, share information. I was a part of a committee. This was 5 years ago that helped start that outreach. But I don't think they made much headway on it. So I've never personally talked to anybody from another country that uses our service, but I've talked to other people outside of our region in the United States that use our service.
Wow. Well, that's great. In the process, in the waiting room there, we actually have, as I like to call him, the South Africa office of Aaron's Opinion. He's in the process of joining. The timing was perfect. And he not only is a podcaster like us, but he also works for 2 online radio stations, one in South Africa that does a lot of what we do, and one based up in New York that does a lot of what we do. So there's going to be 2 other stations that we can get you guys connected with.
Nice.
For sure. But there are internet stations that do very similar things to this. When you mentioned the physical radios that you were giving to people in your region, there he is. His name is Latabo. We'll put him on in a minute. But also too, they do have. I don't have it anymore, but I know that physical internet radios do exist. So have you guys thought about like buying physical internet radios that you could send out to people all over the place and then somehow connect? Because that's the way, you can still give out a radio, which I think is a really cool, it's really sentimental for people. So that's what I would wonder. Have you guys thought about giving out internet radios?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, again, being small nonprofit, you have to work within the budget you have. So the radios that we have, again, some of them are 5 years old. Some of them are 25 years old. Since they're tuned specifically for us outside of our station, they have no use to anybody else. So anybody that we loan it out to usually ends up returning it to us when they no longer need it. But those things are cost prohibitive. Each radio costs between $75 and $100. We usually have to order them in bulk. Luckily, we haven't had to order them in a while. But with the transition to digital, obviously, if an app is free, there's no ads or there's no cost for our app to download. So if you have a smart device, you can already do that. And then one thing that we've tried to transition to for our listeners is Alexa devices. So you can buy an Alexa skill, which is the small hockey puck thing, which is the basic thing that Amazon makes. Usually we buy them in bulk on Black Friday sales or bigger sales. So coming up, we can buy those for $15 to $20 a piece. So those units we ship out more. Again, it takes a user to set them up, because that's one thing that we don't do or don't have the capacity to do, is to go into somebody's home and set them up. So obviously with an internet device, you need to connect to their home internet. They need to have their Amazon account to operate an Alexa. So there are a few base requirements for that. But if anybody wants to get one of those and they have somebody to help them set it up, it's by far a much better listening experience than the radios. So the quality of the signal for SCA, it's similar to AM. You got kind of crackly. It rolls off that top end, so it's not as clear as what you would want it to be, as opposed to a digital signal, which sounds pure and beautiful. So the Alexa is by far the thing that I would recommend most people if we need to send out a device. Obviously, the app is the easiest because it just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download it. So yeah, the one thing that's kind of a hang up with our service. So even though we read all these publications, there's a thing called copyright law, which kind of covers this. But obviously, since the copyright law was made in the 70s, hasn't really caught up with what's known as the internet. So before most of our programming, whenever you download it or play it or listen to our station, it specifically states it's meant to be used for those who are blind or visually impaired. So with that little caveat, that gets us kind of around the copyright side of things for now, at least. Because we are reading materials that most people have to pay for, whether that's through a digital subscription or a physical magazine or publication. That's another reason why going to publications or hosted podcasts and other information is one way to build out our thing. So if the U.S. decides to change copyright law in the future, we still have station and information to get out there to individuals.
Yeah, really, really, really fun, really good. Yeah, I notice a lot of people listen to podcasts, Aaron's opinion on their Alexa, or it says in my analytic, it says Amazon. It says, Amazon skill. So there's a lot of these little products that people tune in from. I'm a Spotify guy. I love Spotify, but everybody has their own flavor for what they like to download.
Yeah,
so.
I'm an Apple guy, so Apple Podcasts is how I get most of my stuff.
Let me tell you, Spotify is a lot easier. It's so much easier to use than Apple. As far as I'm concerned, I go with Spotify over Apple. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I guess because I assume I'm bought into the Apple ecosystem, so I've been using Macs for 15 years.
Oh yeah, they're great. This is an iMac. I'm on my iMac right now.
Yeah. So again, this goes back to my learning audio. So when I first went to school, Macs were much better at handling audio peripherals, so interfaces and then microphones, as opposed to Windows machines. There were drivers you have to set up. Macs, you just had to plug it in and all work together because it was all automatic. So I kind of got bought into that, and from the audio side of things, and obviously iPhones and iMacs and iPads and all that stuff. It just made all my devices link together. Like, as evil as somebody wants to say Apple is, I mean, they make a good product with a good ecosystem. It's hard to get out of.
Without doubt. Yeah, no, Apple's great. Apple's amazing. I find that certain products are just easier to listen to stuff on. They're just more user friendly and just easier to use. So that's,
that's one thing that I don't have to think about. I'm sighted. But the accessibility features of something like Apple or Spotify, obviously if one of them's easier than the other to navigate, obviously choose the path of least resistance.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's why your mileage is going to vary on stuff like that. Yeah, to me, I just go to the search bar and type in whatever podcast I want to listen to and subscribe to the ones I want to. It just makes it easier that way. CarPlay helps too. So when I'm driving, CarPlay, that's when I usually listen to a majority of my podcasts, which are primarily sports based, but makes things easier.
Absolutely. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions for this Aaron Richmond guy and Aaron's opinion. So what do you really want to know about me? Because I noticed that you're doing such good work and you really responded well to my invitation. So I'm really wondering, surely I'm in my heart, I'm partially suspicious, and I might be jumping to a conclusion, but I'm suspicious that you might have heard of what I do before because you responded awfully well and awfully quickly. So had you ever heard of an Aaron Richmond or an Aaron's opinion before?
I have not. Yeah, whenever you emailed me and you mentioned Blind Table Talk, I was like, well, I assume that's how he heard about me through social media. But I mean, we're of the ilk here. I mean, if you send me an email, I'm gonna get back to you one way or another, whether I want to do it or not. But also just advocating for what we do here. I listened to one of your episodes with Blind Table Talk, and I browsed, wanted to check on your legitimacy of who you kind of talk to. Once I noticed that Ice Free Sports was on there and Blind Grilling Experience was on there, I was like, okay, this is a person that's operating in the orbit of kind of who people that I'm talking to already. So I figured if they were kind enough to be on your podcast, it's good enough. It's good enough for me. So
I appreciate it, man.
kind
Really
of a
do.
legitimacy
So,
that way.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. So what do you want to know?
I mean, what's your goal as a podcaster? I mean, obviously bringing stuff to the blind and visually impaired community, but what made you want to get started with doing this?
Well, I was teaching, which I still do, teaching during the pandemic. And I noticed that there's a lot of podcasts in the blindness space, but all of them were not open to me and open to my opinions. And I'm a very opinionated guy and I love to talk, 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 talk. Talking into a microphone makes me happy. This is what I want to do the whole day. So I figured, well, since I can't shut up, why don't I just try to record myself and see where it goes?
Yeah.
And here's where it went. And then it just developed over 4 years of me networking with other blind people, blind podcasters, just constantly trying, okay, who's next? Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? Constantly rinsing and repeating until eventually it came to this point. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
how.
mean, yeah, that's not a lot of my vision. You get an interest in something and you want to do that interest and you see how far you can take it. And obviously, if it's something you enjoy doing, and can have success at it, keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah, good. Other questions for me?
I mean, what made you want to reach out to us besides just what sparked your interest seeing
Well, I went to the
through Blind
website.
Table Talk? Yeah.
I went to the website and I saw the great work that you guys do. And I saw the network part. I saw all the elements and all the ingredients that you guys are putting together. And I thought, oh, that's really great stuff. I gotta dig into this and see what they're doing in the industry because you're doing the right thing. So I want you in my podcast community because you're doing the right thing. You're the attention that I need and want. And you're the person that I want to be around because I only have successful people in my podcast family. So, I kind of want you in my corner just as much, or whether you want me in your corner on your app or not, that's totally great and fine. But know that I want you in my corner. I, I
Yeah,
need I need your knowledge just as much as you might need mine in the future. You never
yeah,
know.
and that's definitely a conversation that we can have. It can be off there. But
For
yeah,
sure.
I mean, obviously the podcast network and your frequency of what you do it's something that could be a part of our network as well. It would just be carving out details of blocks and schedules and see how those things can kind of work out too. Um, but yeah, I mean, content's good, and then variety is good. So even you say you have strong opinions, we like strong opinions, whether they're agreed to or not. There's other people that view that way. If somebody doesn't like what you're saying on the episode or a particular guest you got on, they also have the option to not listen to it.
Exactly.
We don't take sides, at our station. We don't, again, we're non-denominational. We're non-politically affiliated. We read everything and anything as way it's printed or talked about. So we don't censor anything here either. So, we read Rolling Stone magazine, which has profanity in it. We put a warning beforehand so people aren't comfortable with those things. They don't have to listen to it, but we don't censor the curse words in there or topics that they talk about.
Well, that's really good. All right. Let's, if you don't mind, let's head down to South Africa, because I am sure this guy here, his name is Latabo. He is a fellow broadcaster and he definitely has questions.
Sure.
He's loving this. All right. Let me put him on here. Okay. So there you go. All right. It takes the system a second, but I'm sure he has questions. Go right ahead.
Let me just greet everybody in here and greet the guest of today. So I just caught a glimpse of what was the conversation about, but I just want to know because the thing that caught my attention, mind's eye. I mean, like, what is mind's eye, by the way?
The actual word?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a popular phrase. I mean, I would say around the world, maybe not. To imagine something in your mind. So obviously that extends to blind and visually impaired users. So with the content that we provide, where you have to use your ears and not your eyes, but it gives you a visualization in your head of the content we're talking about. So using your mind's eye is essentially just using your brain and ears to visualize, even though you may physically not be able to.
Oh, okay. No, thank you for the explanation. Thank you for the explanation,
Yeah,
Mike.
no problem.
Yeah. And I think I've heard also about the internet radio stuff. I'm not sure if you guys are doing that, or are you just only distributing all the stuff, or is it just only like you just only doing those stuff, or like broadcasting, or are you just distributing?
Uh, uh, Kind of both. So obviously the content that we do here in house, it's broadcast information service related to where we're reading magazines and newspapers. So that's all done in house and
Okay.
broadcast out. Obviously we don't write those publications.
Okay.
But we have volunteers who read it. And then the podcast network side of things, where we have creators like Aaron, we're kind of distributors, for that. So where I'm not going to say like Apple and Spotify, because it's not like that at all. But we're making a platform for blind content creators and content, and then giving those a new voice. So we primarily operate in St. Louis, which is in the middle of the country of Missouri in the United States. And then we broadcast that out to our local communities. So giving those creators and those podcasting networks a platform and area base they may not normally be in. It's just an extension of what they're doing, and getting them more access immediately to people and demographics they might not normally come in contact with.
Wow. What a multi information. That's one thing I can say on that. But thanks anyway for the information.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome. So welcome. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's great. That's great. All right. Well, I think that just about covers everything we could have possibly unearthed about this amazing organization. I will certainly be taking a very close look at what you guys do, and things like that. We can definitely connect off air. Certainly, I do the majority of my communication over on WhatsApp, by the way. I don't know. Mike, do you do WhatsApp?
No, primarily through email is how I do most
Okay,
of my
that's
stuff,
fine.
or phone calls.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we can still exchange numbers.
Yeah.
I'll just email you my number, and if you want further stuff, you can simply just text your name to that number, and then we can just go from there. But
Sure.
that's always okay. No, I totally understand you want to stay organized with emails and not get too bogged down. I will say, if you wanted to get into WhatsApp, the advantage is you would be able to have people sending in audio from all over the world, and it's very useful for sharing information globally. So that's what I've noticed about that. But all good, all is fine. Well, very good. Do you have any? So, Mike, do you have any final words that you want people to know about MindsEye, ways that they can get in touch and things like that, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if anybody through either the rest of the United States or the rest of the world, if they're looking for information and they're a blind or vision impaired user, and want content from national publications in the United States, obviously our website, mindseyeradio.org, our show list there has all of those offerings, as well as our Alexa skill, or our iOS app or Google Play Store app. And then, yeah, if anybody that is in the St. Louis area that's listening to this podcast, if you've never heard of MindsEye before, first, I'm shocked. Two, if you want to get involved with anything that we do, whether that's through our broadcast service, through our audio description events, or through Adaptive Athletics, they can reach out to me directly. My email address is mcurtis, CURTIS, at mindseyeradio.org. I'll be glad and happy to answer any information that I can.
Fabulous. Could not have asked for a better episode. Thank you so much. And we will definitely connect off air. And okay, there we go. Yeah, so that was fabulous. Exactly. Could not have asked for better. So, well, Mike, we will definitely keep in touch, and let's connect. I'll send you my number, and we can go from there, and we'll certainly connect about answering my other questions and answering your other questions and things like that. But
sure.
But yet, and regardless, thank you for what you guys do. This providing knowledge through audio content is truly special. It's special for young people. I'm a young guy. I'm in my 30s, and then it's great for old. It's great. It's just doing the right thing. It's a huge help in people's lives when our lives have so much turmoil and so much uncertainty. What you do is helping people to have a good day.
Cool.
So
appreciate it.
It really means everything. Trust me, it means everything to me, and it means so much to all of your listeners. And just don't stop. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing great.
Thanks, man.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll be in touch soon, and have a great day. As we like to say here on Aaron's Opinion, be well, everybody, and stay tuned for the next exciting episode. So until next time, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.